Well, except for that one. Here we go. Welcome, bienvenue. Is justice coming right on time? Which we'll find out soon enough. Hamish, would you care to start us off?
Well, it's really a very humbling position I sit in today. But Gareth and I do a tremendous amount of work together, and have been doing for some time, and we're into the hundreds of podcasts we've done sort of here, there, and sort of all over the place. But I have to say, one of the most gratifying times that we have is trying to bring to the knowledge of people out there. We do have some regular people listening in, but there are others who come to join us from time to time. But this probably is one of the proudest moments we have in terms of the week, because we're not going away. We're going to just sort of keep going, because this is such a serious matter that people really are not looking at what's going on within sort of cladding. Now, we try very hard to actually come up with a title for each week, and we're speaking today about the consequences of what goes on within cladding. This is the basic sort of outline, and what actually goes on during the course of remediation. In part, there's so much to this whole story, and we can imagine, it doesn't matter. You imagine you've got the most beautiful house, and you've got this most beautiful view over the sea, over the lake, whatever it happens to be, and all of a sudden you have a shroud which is dropped over your house, and you cannot see out of any of the windows. You cannot see proper daylight, and you've been told this has cost you. It doesn't matter whether it's 100,000, whether it's 1 million, whether it's 2 million or 10 million. You cannot see proper daylight out of your windows for the next 1.5 to 2 years. What's that going to be like? Now, today, as I said, I feel very, very humbled. We have here with three experts who have so much knowledge. Matt, who does tremendous research. Ben does some great work as well with his podcast to do with housing sort of generally. And there's Steve sort of trapped there within Royal Artillery Keys, trying to do his work along with the House of Lords to try and get something done to make this experience that people are faced to force as no consequence of what they've done at all, yet they have to live through it. And that's why I feel humble, because we've got these experts around us.
Well, it is amazing. I should have said, but I wanted to get on with it because time is short. It's the hidden costs of long-term remediation. And first of all, I'm going to go to Steve Day.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, part of the hidden costs is the fact we have a 2-tier remediation standard. So we've got the definition of building safety risk under the Building Safety Act that came in 22, which does cover a lot of combustible material that the actual remediation standard, PAS 9980, is not covering. And of course, Royal Artillery Keys is a case in point where they want to leave the second most combustible material on our fire stairs going up 16 stories. And they're the single escape stair of our huge blocks of flats. There's 8 of them. And the standard that they want to use for the majority of the remediations that are publicly funded allows this material on. And then if we'd gone via the courts and got something called a remediation order, they wouldn't have been able to keep it on because it would have counted as a building safety risk. And I think that is one of the key. So just to give you how it's going now, our remediation started at Royal Artillery Keys. So we've got 2 years to be wrapped up with all of this netting, knowing that they're leaving a load of combustible material on at the end of it, condemning us to permanently high insurance, and also without any guarantees that our internal remediations will be done, because the council very helpfully have said there's no evidence that there's any breaches of building regulations at the time of construction, and have now threatened me, as you know, with criminal harassment for bringing it up too much. And you know, it's unacceptable anyway. by the by, that is the mental toll that I, as a residence chair of 1,000 people, have been under. I've been, stressed out with these allegations. It's been shared to Parliament, apparently, according to the head of legal. I don't know who knows about it. And, I'm very worried about my future, all for standing up. So, yeah, it's not good. No.
Often the messenger is shot. It's a shame and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Matt, I believe you've monitored the entire situation as it's burgeoned and exploded. What are your thoughts?
Well, I kind of live this world not as a resident, but as a professional, and spend most of my time talking to clients and other people in the industry about how to navigate all of the stuff that Steve's talking about. So even the industry professionals don't really understand or know how to navigate this mess that's been created post-Grenfell. So it is enormously complicated, and I've spoken many times before that often the way that these things are responded to lacks any kind of humanity. So as Steve mentioned, you're thrown into the way I describe it is you're probably going along living a normal life, and then all of a sudden somehow you find out you're living in a dangerous building, and from then you're your ability to move is curtailed, the ability of your letting a property out potentially to get new tenants. That's before you've wrapped it in netting and ripped the walls off. And then there's living through. So it may be 3, 4, 5 years plus. The extreme end is 8 years for a lady called Deepa Mystery that I know, that she's been living through the implications of the building safety crisis. So there needs to be some form of measurement of human response and support for people that are in this role. The fact that there are funding schemes that may pay for some of this stuff to be put right really is not suitable or acceptable. There needs to be a far more holistic view of, and not just financial compensation, but emotional support, just even a general understanding that this is a hideous situation to be in. You're not just a number on a spreadsheet, which is the way that the Ministry of Housing tend to view the world.
Royal Artillery Keys has already been subject to at least one death, one suicide directly linked with this crisis. This is not acceptable, is it?
Gav, just to clarify, Amanda wasn't Royal Artillery Keys. It was just in West London.
I do apologise. Sorry about that.
No,
but it was caused
to the crisis. You're correct.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So Matt, sorry, going back to you before I pass on to Ben, which I'm very keen to do because there's a tale to be told. Surely there should be in place a whole series of support for the mental health of people who are now caged.
Yes, absolutely. I can't argue with that one bit. There's a lot we can do to sort out the funding schemes, the way that risks are assessed, etc., etc. But when you then throw into people like Steve, for example, they've got to get into a fight, they've got to get threatened with legal action, they've got to try and work out how to infiltrate the press and get them to tell their story. The toll that takes over and above really it should be, this has happened, it's terrible, it shouldn't have happened, arm around the shoulder, we will fix this problem and we will minimize the impact on you and your life. Actually, you have to become a campaigner and an advocate, and you have to put up with, as Steve has realized, not all of your neighbors will agree with you. So you have to live next to these people sometimes that can end up becoming enemies.
But Matt, as far as I know, the council did something which I consider to be insidious and frankly unacceptable, that while he's campaigning, they then did a leaflet drop to all the other residents, effectively making him look like a charlatan.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same thing happened to the rebel residents as so-called at Grenfell. They were vilified, they were blocked on systems, they were treated as being troublemakers that were then proved, unfortunately, latterly to be absolutely correct in most of what they were asserting. So I think the real disappointment for me, and the criminality of all of this, if you like, is that those people in power haven't learnt the lessons from Grenfell. This isn't somebody just hypothesizing. This has been proved through an inquiry and now going into a criminal charges, we hope, that residents need to be engaged in building safety. That is now enshrined in law. What you don't do is squash residents that have concerns. You address the concern and say, Steve, we believe you're wrong for these reasons. Here is our evidence. You don't just try to silence people and threaten them with
Right.
legal action. That's disgusting.
Ben, thank you for waiting so patiently. I believe that you have a terrible and tawdry tale to tell.
Well, I do, but just to sort of look back on, since setting up the housing sector podcast, I was pretty much unaware of the cladding issue beyond what we'd heard from Grenfell. And since then, I've had conversations with the Welsh gladiators, Giles Grover, Deepa, who's someone you mentioned there, Matt, as well. And these issues just they're so widespread, and there is no place in the mainstream media for that. And it's not just cladding. We've had issues with retrofitting problems. Dan Bruce, Matt Lismore, and so many that I will forget, and I'm sorry for. And the problem is we have watered down legislation. We have the likes of Birmingham City Council, who I recently did a podcast and blog on, who simply have no money to make the corrections that are needed. But more importantly, and what underscores all of this, is there's no consequence. There are no repercussions for any of this. There's been no prosecutions for Grenfell. And if you cannot prosecute people for the loss of 72 lives, then where's the bite? You have no bite. We have no comeback. And it's part of the reason that I started the Housing Sector podcast, because I want to give a platform for people to be able to speak out. And it's why platforms like your own here are growing, because we need that audience, but we need to reach more people. More people need to be woken up from it. And I fear there's so much bad news at the minute around immigration, national health, education. Housing is just another one that the government can't deal with, so refuses to engage with. And then to come back to the sort of legal action that I alone have faced, just when I started out with my own landlord, Green Square Accord, raising valid issues that had been upheld by the housing ombudsman. And I found myself in front of the courts twice. I've been accused of everything from harassment to copyright law. And they tried to get an injunction on me where I agreed not to be annoying. Well, being annoying is so open to interpretation that I couldn't possibly agree to it.
I think my wife would like the same thing about me. Unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to stop. Carry on.
My wife dines out on the joke that her husband has been taken to court for being annoying. That is her favourite joke. And then it still carries on. I mean, today I've just published a blog about their communications director who still actively goes after content on YouTube, who tries to get my website taken down. And they've never come after me for libel or slander. They've never done that because everything is backed with facts. I've got the facts. It was discussed in the House of Commons, my own case, strategic lawsuit against public participation. And that's what these housing associations, the same housing associations who will go, the residents, the customers are at the heart of everything we do. This is our customer engagement tale. This is what we're doing to learn from our mistakes. Are the same companies who are now using the legal system to stop people like myself, Steve Day, from talking out and raising it. And again, as Matt says, it links back to the very Grenfell report that highlighted this as a critical issue in the safety of residents.
Well, what gets me is even with the remediation going, they're going to still leave large patches on the stairwell with a content which has got a similar composition to barbecue firelighters. I mean, I just don't understand the logic behind it.
The legislation is so watered down now, and it has to be, because Labour's come out with we are going to build 1.5 million homes. That's what we're going to do. And we cannot do that. They can't do that if they make legislation. If they make it too hard to build, people just aren't interested. They won't do it. They'll invest their money elsewhere.
So hang on, are you saying that they've effectively said, look, we'll make it so you can build the houses out of straw, even though the big bad wolf is around the corner, I may well blow them down, just because I know you guys are only willing to build stuff out of straw? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's sort of what I'm saying. Yes, the legislation.
I'm not going to hold you to it, Ben.
Oh, please, can we hold him to it, please? Go on,
the legislation is being watered down. There's no doubt about it, and it has to be, because we can't build homes if they're too expensive to build, and if they're not making money, no one's interested. And this is the crux we find ourselves in, part of a capitalist society, isn't it? There has to be. put it back to the council and say we need to provide homes. And if you start to provide homes that are safe, that are of quality, then people thrive and they bring back revenue into your society. They also are not such a dredge on your well-being, as we've mentioned, the health risks, the NHS, the education system. All of this crumbles under the weight of poor housing. Poor housing is at the foundation of the rock. What we need is good, stable foundations to grow in, to be supported in, to feel safe in. Once we've got that, we can all thrive in our own way. But without that, that's the chink in the chain, as I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Ben, and may the force be with you. Steve, can you tell me, is there any likelihood that there's going to be a reduction in the natural amount of cynicism that's built up since the so-called remediation started? I mean, I don't believe a word they say. Do you?
Well, they want to accelerate it. That's the word from the government. So that clearly means a different approach, probably an even more watered down approach. And because PAS 9980 has been reviewed again just very recently, and it's going to be published, I think, early next year, we'll see if it's going to be used to, water down even more remediations. But I think effectively there's another tranche of remediations, and we're going to trial it at RAC. So you have your basic remediation under PAS, then you go for a remediation order, and you get the stuff that PAS didn't bother with, and you get that done as well. So you'll have the second tranche of remediations. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically make a case to the freeholders that, do you want to pay and then recover, get the money out of Barratt in our case, with this second tranche of remediation? You're going to have to do two then. And the second one will be a lot harder. So, we're going to trial that at RAC, and we'll see. And then I think we need to say to people, get the message out there. You can get the stuff that PAS is not actually going to do, because you can go to a first tier court and get it ordered. And, as long as you've got enough defects that actually would breach the building risk definition under the Building Safety Act, it's a route to remedy. But on the silencing around and the effect of the remediation of the council, they've also, of course, taken out my Liberal Democrat campaign for West Thamesmead. I've had to withdraw now because it's nasty. So it's now subverted local authority, non-Labour candidacies for councillor candidates. So that's been very hard for me but I had to weigh it up, and I was like, if they're going to make allegations of criminal behaviour, I don't want my job being put at risk. And I know some of the people at Santander watching this right now will be shocked that this has happened, but I'm saying it just in case, because the head of legal has said she's sent it to an MP. So I have to try and say, well, it's not happened. All I did was ask repeatedly for a false position to be either justified or retracted, denying all our expert evidence exists of construction defects. And
they still are. They still are denying all the evidence, aren't they?
Yeah, well, and it's also damaging for us if we wanted to go for the remediation order, because they basically don't have a case against Barratt if the council's findings is relied upon. And I guess the question out there is this happening across the country? Are councils quashing campaigners that do rise up and represent their residents that are undergoing building remediation?
Well, let me jump to Matt. Matt, this is happening across the country, isn't it?
Well, undoubtedly, I can't speak for the closing down or the silencing. There are occasions, but I think have been mentioned. But definitely the issues persist across the country. And I think to Steve's point, the way that I sort of explain this without sort of technical language is, if a building has been built in a crap way on the outside, why would it not be crap on the inside?
Quite right.
So as you start addressing the outside, we're talking about cladding, you start taking the cladding off, you find, and other investigations, you find other things that are crap as well, and that leads to more work. So to think that remediation at pace is going to do anything other than create more problems is for the birds. Those issues are the issues, they need to be dealt with. And if that means 20 years worth of work, it's 20 years rather than 5. We've got to get this right. But to Ben's point about the new build targets, that I think slightly counter to what he said. I think for high-rise buildings anyway, so higher risk buildings, per the legislation, with the gateway procedures that are in place now, better quality, safer buildings should pop out at the end. The problem is they're not popping out at the end because they're spending so long in the various gateway sign-off stages. The real problem for me is the buildings like Steve's, that there are about 13,000 of them above 18 meters, that are full of people sleeping, which is where the risk to life is. And there is a complete backlog and lack of progress in assessing those buildings properly and putting forward defensible safety cases. So with all the media attention on, we can't hit the 1.5 million target because all of these, it was in the news this week, Sky did a piece. That's pretty much all talking about new build when nobody's living yet. So it's bad that we're not switching on new buildings, but it's not going to kill anybody if that building sits empty. What does kill people is big fires like Grenfell in buildings that are occupied.
But you would thought that you would be dealing with the risk to life now. I believe, Steve, don't we have stats that say that 30% of Barratt
35%, yeah.
Sorry, apologies. 35% are frankly unlivable.
Well, they've got life critical defects. So as per the developer contract, it says they're serious enough defects that they're critical to life safety. But of course,
I wouldn't want to go and live on a potential bonfire. And
imagine a 77% on Taylor Wimpey.
Yes, that's what I was going to go to next.
Are deemed by the government to be life critical defects. And of course, this is the remediation stats that the builders send to the government. I bet they wish they didn't have to do that. But it's publicly available and it's probably changed. I don't know which way it's gone, but it's not going to go too far in any of their favors if it starts at 35%. So we've got a big problem with defects. We've got 1.7 million people excluded. We've got the two-tier remediation system. We've got a government that doesn't want to do any more. They want to focus on the new builds, as Matt said. And we've got, Matt, I don't know if you want to mention briefly about the forced evacuations. What are the numbers looking like now?
Just under 15,000 people.
Just under 15,000 forced evacuations.
Evacuated due to defects, right? That is disgusting.
Well,
so
you've really got to be bad to reach that point. It's huge. And we've, just to throw into the mix, we now have a new housing secretary inbound as of a few minutes ago.
Who is it, Matt?
Who knows?
Oh, right. Well, that will be very important too.
I think my neighbour's cat's putting their hat in for the job. We'll see. Maybe they can do a better job.
Yeah,
Ben, do you have a last word before I pass back to Hamish?
I certainly do. Look, Steve was one of my early reluctant heroes, and we have up and down the country a growing number of reluctant heroes, myself included, who never chose to get involved in housing activism, housing campaigning, or anything like this. We give up our free time. It's impacted a lot of us through our jobs, and Steve through legal battles. All of this, we shouldn't be up to grassroots campaigners to say the buildings that we're living in aren't safe. It just shouldn't be.
No.
Especially when you're telling nothing but the truth. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, you can see why I'm in awe of the speakers that we've had this week, and really I can just sort of sit back and say a very, very big thank you, Matt, for the tremendous amount of research that he actually sort of carries out. So much of it sort of hidden in the background there. Very few of us will ever find out the type of work that he's done, but when he can actually sort of pick up figures like we've done, like the number of people who are actually forced out of their properties. We can actually sort of say, Steve and Ben are fortunate in some respects. At least they're able to live in those properties. But how fortunate are they? What is the health impact upon those people? Now, just thanks so much for those contributions today. And to those listeners of you out there, do please try and take out to the rest of the people who aren't listening that this is a very serious matter that millions of people are suffering from throughout this country.
Well, it only remains for me to say thank you so much for Ben Jenkins, founder of houndingsector.co.uk. Please go and check out that website. Matt Hodges-Long, the founder of Building Safety Register. Thank you, sir. And Steve Day, of course, buildingsafetyscheme.org, our resident who's stuck in Iraq or on the rack, depending on your point of view.
Absolutely.
And Hamish McClay, of course, the founder and our Lord and Master, who helped me put this together in the first place. Thank you so much for your time. And all of you looking out there, please help us take action. Raise the standard, both metaphorically and actually. Let's make sure that this gets taken notice of. And please, councils, if you're watching, can you stop being such a silly billies and actually take action? Do something other than writing court writs. And my usual sign off, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after your mental health. Until next week, goodbye.
There's a tip out some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish you the moon